there will be a demonstration by the past president of the Sharps Rifle Association, and he will give us an explanation about how all of that takes place and some things about the Sharps rifle that you might want to know. Robert McCubbin for the WWHA Roundup. We're partnering today with the Hutchinson County Museum and in cooperation with the Panhandle Plains Museum. And I'd like at this time to introduce to you Michael Grauer, who is representing the Panhandle Plains Museum today.
As Roy said, my name is Michael Grauer. I'm officially the Associate Director for Curatorial Affairs. I have no idea what that even means, but if the curators want to have affairs, that's their business. I don't care. They're adults. You know, they have to pay the consequences. But mainly, I'm the Curator of Art and Western Heritage. I've been at Panhandle Plains for 28 years next month, and it's been my privilege and blessing to be able to come out to this very special place one or two times since I've been at Panhandle Plains, and we usually come out just before the anniversary of the battle every year and do a little mowing. And we did about 3 weeks ago, but as you can see, we didn't do a very good job. We get hammered all the time about the lack of proper signage, but actually that works in the favor of the antiquity site because we have had vandalism out here before. Most of the buildings had cornerstones at one time after the excavation in the late 70s. Those are gone now in somebody's living room. So I know your esteemed group here would not do that, and you get a free bottle of water. Like any good treaty, we're going to give you free stuff. So, you know. But anyway, welcome, and we're glad you're here. You're people after my own heart, and I'm glad you came down to see us in Canyon.
Okay, that's enough from me. I'm going to call on Mr. Kurt House now.
Thank you, Roy. I don't know how many of you realize what a historic event you're about to witness today. This hasn't been done since, I believe, 1936. And it's a historic event in Texas. We hope you all realize the significance of it. We're very thankful to our reenactors and also Bob Butterfield, who's the shooter, and everybody that contributed to this. Most of all, we're most thankful to the Wittenberg and Cobble families who own this ranch.
Okay, Brett Cruz, if you'd come next. Brett is one of the members of the Texas State Historical Commission. He's going to tell us a little bit about the second battle.
The Indians, Comanche, the Kiowa, some Southern Cheyenne, were being recruited and led by Isite of the Comanche. He was a medicine man who had made promises to the various Indians that he could stop the buffalo hunters' rifles from firing. Their bullets wouldn't affect them. The Indians were wanting to hear that kind of message because they were becoming desperate. The buffalo were quickly disappearing in their own territory. Another of the Indian leaders was a young leader by the name of Quanah. Quanah and Isite had partnered to recruit warriors to go on the attack against the buffalo hunters and to drive them out of the area. Now during the battle, as we all know, the buffalo hunters were quite successful in fending off the Indians and killing 15 to 30 of them. 3 of the buffalo hunters died during the battle. The Indians were quite surprised, I think, and even astonished that Isite's medicine was a failure. Oh, God. And I think after the battle, some of the Indians even wanted to kill him. But so he lost favor. I also think and believe that probably Quanah lost some favor as well with the Indians because he had recruited with Isite to make the attack.
You're Texas State historian, Mr. Bill O'Neill.
Billy Dixon was a frontier adventurer of the front rank. He was a bullwhacker at 15. He was a trapper, a gifted sharpshooter, buffalo hunter, an Indian fighter of legendary exploits. He was a Medal of Honor winner, an Army Scout. He was a cowboy here on the Turkey Tracks Ranch, and he established a pioneer home out here at Adobe Walls 64 in that direction. I want to quote him. "Those were exciting times. There is something beyond description that clutches a man's heart and imagination in the Plains country. A mile or so from the original Adobe Walls, they set up the little community that Brent described to us. Now, of course, Dixon was one of the defenders when several hundred warriors attacked Adobe Walls at dawn on June 27, 1874. Dixon was one of the first to spot movement out there. And he said, I was thunderstruck. The black body of moving objects suddenly spread out like a fan. And from it went up one single solid yell, a war whoop that seemed to shake the very air of the early morning. Then came the thudding roar of running horses and the hideous cries of the individual warriors. Dixon ran from his wagon to the nearest Adobe building, Hanrahan's saloon. Dixon was one of 9 defenders of that saloon. His friend Bat Masterson also was in the saloon. Bat was the youngest at 20, and I believe Billy at 23 was the second youngest. Forted up inside these Adobe buildings, the sharpshooters, they were professional hunters, thousands of rounds of ammunition in the general store, so they beat off the onslaught of what should have been overwhelming numbers. As Brent mentioned, there were 3 men killed early in the battle, and on the second day they were buried. Adobe Walls remained surrounded, but there were no further attacks on the 3rd day. And here's what Dixon said about his famous shot, which went out there to one of those ridges. I don't recall anymore. He said, on the 3rd day, a party of about 15 Indians appeared on the edge of the bluff that you're looking at, east of Adobe Walls Creek. Some of the boys suggested that I try the big 50 on them. A number of exaggerated accounts have been written about this incident. He said, I took careful aim, pulled the trigger. We saw an Indian fall from his horse. The others dashed out of sight behind a clump of timber. Now, on that 3rd day, buffalo hunters began arriving at Adobe Walls from their camps, which were isolated and very dangerous. Within a few more days, more than 100 hunters were at Adobe Walls. Now, Jim Hanrahan, the saloon owner, organized about 24 men, including Billy Dixon, to go to Dodge City for a relief party. And it was at Dodge in August that Colonel Nelson Miles hired Dixon as a scout. And the next month, Dixon and a fellow scout, Amos Chapman, were assigned to deliver dispatches to Camp Supply in Indian Territory. 4 enlisted men were assigned as escorts. On their 2nd morning out, the courier party encountered more than 100 Comanche and Kiowa warriors. And you see how open this country is. The warriors quickly rode to surround the 6 white men. Caught in the open on a hillside, 5 of the defenders opened fire while Private George White held the horses. Well, Private White was exposed and he got shot down. The horses stampeding, carrying off canteens, extra ammunition, and clothing. 3 other men were wounded, including Dixon's fellow scout, Amos Chapman, whose leg later had to be amputated. Dixon and one of the soldiers remained unwounded, but they all poured a desperate fire into the galloping warriors, wounded or not. Dixon spotted a buffalo wallow, a small depression nearby is about 10 feet wide. If there was any kind of depression at all, whenever it rained, got a little mud and the buffalo liked to wallow around on their backs in it. So under fire, the defenders made it to the buffalo wallow, quickly digging deeper with their knives and hands. Now they had some cover. They held out all day despite heat, thirst, hunger, and wounds. That night, Private Smith, the horse holder, died. Next morning, Dixon set out for help, and very soon he spotted a cavalry column. This desperate battle at the Buffalo Wallow earned Dixon and the other defenders a Medal of Honor, and a lot of you were at the Panhandle Plains Museum yesterday. Dixon's Medal of Honor is in their collection. Early in 1913, he contracted pneumonia and died. He was 62. He was buried with Masonic honors in Texline, but on June 27, 1929, the 55th anniversary of the battle in which he made one of the West's most famous shots, he was interred right there. You've probably all seen his marker by now. Billy delivered, in effect, his own valedictory to Olive on the last page of their book. He said, gladly would I live it all over again.
I brought a gun at the request of Kurt House to duplicate the shot. The rifle is not the caliber that Billy Dixon used, but it is a Texas gun. It was shipped to Fort Griffin. It's a 16-pound, 45 2 7/8. That's the biggest cartridge that Sharp's loaded. It can handle 105 grains of black powder up to 120 grains, a 550 grain bullet. This was shipped right at the height of the buffalo hunting, and it's been in my collection a long time, and never shot it before until this request. I shot it 3 times with the blanks that we're going to use. Hopefully the blanks that I brought will go off as well as the ones I did at home. If you look up on the bluff, there's 2 Indians up there. That's the ones I'm supposed to shoot at. Those guys have been sitting on that bluff for a long time.
Boy, look at him run for it.